So today, this all happened within the last 3 weeks. And so we're calling this the Banksia Initiative. And it's not about setting up any new expert group who's going to be the gatekeepers, but recognising that we needed to do something, we wanted to do something quite quickly. And acknowledging that there is a growing body of evidence from different fields of practice and research that we really need to draw together to be able to address these pressing needs. And I think, it's very clear to everyone that this is a bit of a game changer of a time. This is the new normal, and things, communities that thought they would never be at risk have found out that they're very vulnerable. So our particular interest was then, as people who, many of us now are researchers and academics, but we're all practitioners and teachers to begin with, and recognising that there is this growing body of evidence confirming the vital role that schools play in individual, community and national recovery from disasters. But also there's a growing evidence base that the arts can play particular roles, and they offer us these different forms and communications processes and techniques through which individuals, communities and the nation can both respond, recover, reimagine and rebuild. So the people who immediately jumped on board as I was contacting people in my different networks, colleagues in New Zealand, Professor Peter O'Connor, Professor Carol Much, who've done quite a lot of work and built an expertise base in creative recovery and the role of schools and the arts. Also Professor Helen Cahill from University of Melbourne, colleagues from the University of Sydney with Robin Ewing, Professor Robin Ewing, Professor Michael Anderson, Dr. John Saunders, who's now the Chair of the National Advocates for Arts and Education. And we've also had assistance from Peter's Creative Thinking Project with Alex. Have I missed anyone? I also at the same time was talking to Scotia Munkovich from the Creative Recovery Network because so much of the work overlaps. And also a couple of our doctoral students, Tony Jarrett and Charlene Kelleher, who had these insights and contacts in the disaster management, resilience, recovery areas. And so it's been really exciting to see how quickly everyone's come on board and wanted to contribute. But we felt that it was really important that we were able to curate the existing knowledge and get it out there to teachers, communities and schools as soon as possible. So that's why we wanted to try and do something before schools go back and not replace existing material, but start curating some of that to actually make it really available. And same for this webinar today. But it's recognising that we are coming from quite different backgrounds and we haven't always known about each other's work and work together. So it's really exciting to have these different experts come together today, and you're going to hear from some of the leading experts in the field and coming from education and learning, from different arts and creative practice fields, but also recognising those overlaps with arts education and then disaster resilience, recovery, etc. And while we've got different concerns, some of the similarities we have are things about concern for learning, recognising the power of knowledge, creative expression, creative solutions. But I guess all of us, it's about this working towards a common good and acting for the well-being of people and planet. So the two, I guess, main outcomes so far have been about putting together what we called a first tranche of materials and resources, and to move quite quickly, they've been hosted on the Arts Health Network of New South Wales, and Alex has played a key role in getting those up in record time. The other thing is, it was about how do we provide a platform to build this community of interest across very different domains and places. And so we've set up this Facebook group. It is a group at the moment, which means the posts from all members are published, you can see them. And we've mainly published existing publicly available work, but I think it's also about these ideas and opportunities to collaborate into the future. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time just to sort of set the scene about why we've got this focus on arts and education in disaster resilience. And as I said, I think, there's this understanding, growing understanding that the arts can play important roles, and that this is often very much about how do people deal with their feelings. And everyone is feeling deeply and strongly in all different ways across the country. And that's where the arts can play this important role in helping express feelings in different ways, but also to try and make some meaning out of it, some sort of understandings. Also recognising, though, sometimes the arts are just a distraction. It's a way to keep our mind off things, to be come together to do some things. And there is this satisfaction and reward that can be found in deep immersion in creating things. And often being part of a group endeavour coming together, that is very powerful in itself. And the content of which may have nothing whatsoever to do with disasters and bushfires, but it can actually assist in that process. And lots of people acknowledge that the arts play an important role for healing, and you'll hear some great case studies about that. But it's also the arts enable us the opportunity to imagine, envisage, and create alternative futures. I just wanted to talk a little bit from my background in arts, in particular in drama education, and some concepts I've found quite useful over the years in working in different situations. And because there's some people who have asked questions saying, you know, I've been told maybe the arts and doing stuff in communities and schools and with kids' experiences straight up might not be a good time. Maybe we should wait, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Now, going back to Vygotsky, but we've got others in our field who've talked about the way that the arts can provide the means to both distance experience, but also connect. So creating these things outside of ourselves can actually let us explore things that we can't do in real life. So we can both distance, but on the other hand, we can also connect to things that we might not connect to in real life, and so feel things in very real ways. In the drama area, people like Dorothy Heathcote, John Carroll, Jerry Boland's done a great job drawing together their work in recent times. They talk about things like the protection of role distance, and this can be really useful. So sometimes starting with the participant experience as a participant may not be the best place to start. That might be too difficult. Sometimes starting from further afield as a reporter, as a recorder, or an artist who's created a response can provide that safety of distance. So it's both real but not real, and you can create these degrees of protection. Elsewhere in the literature, you can find people talking about the use of analogy. So it might not be a drama about bushfires at all, but about community confronting difficulties and coming together in some other shape or form. People have talked about using verbatim theatre, where you're using the real words and experiences of people, using distancing through form, and then externalisation, puppets, masks, model making, but that also that power of enacting alternatives. And I thought I'd just share two experiences, two examples that kind of did this in different ways. So in 2013, we had the opposite problem. We had floods across the country and in fact, a lot of the world. And in fact, at one stage, I think 90% of Queensland was under floodwaters. So we had an international project that was wanting to look at issues to do with water, but it was in 5 different sites internationally. So we created an analogy about a community that has confronted a crisis, something to do with water. What was really interesting, while it was fictional, the students couldn't connect until they could identify relevant situations in their own countries and also historically. So they found all these underwater cities and devastated cultures close to their homes. But it did use an analogy to explore issues to do with preparedness and how do we cope and what occurs. At the same time, a colleague of mine, Kristen Burgess in Monto, she returned to her school and she said, you know, we couldn't just pretend it hadn't happened, life goes on. Kids were having to get tractors and boats to be able to get to school. So we couldn't just carry on with the curriculum. But what she did was they were going to be doing a circus unit. And you go, circus and disasters, really? They started off by kids sharing their stories, sharing photos, but then they used layering of verbatim theatre. So what she actually used was a community Facebook group, actual posts real life stories, not the kids' stories, but the community stories that layered the circus skills in it. It was just the most amazing performance, but the community was so proud of that. And it was bearing witness to their experiences, but also celebrating the community and the way that they'd responded. So I just thought I'd share those. So I'm really pleased today to welcome everybody. As I say, you're in for a treat in that we've got a lot of the experts in the field. I'm going to hand over to Professor Michael Anderson, who's chairing the rest of the session.
Thanks, Sue, and welcome to everyone in the room and everyone who's joined us virtually. I might just say that I'd echo what Sue's been saying. It's an amazing mix of educators, researchers, people with experience in the arts, in health, and I think it's going to be an amazing interchange of discussion and ideas. And on that, if you are joining us virtually and you would like to ask a question, we're going to have a question time at the end of the process of the presentations. So if you do have a question, please fire them off in the chat box in the program that you're engaging with this event on. And please, by all means, add your name and add where you're from, because we'd really like to personalise the responses to you, and also who you would like to ask the question of. Without much further ado, we're going to kick off, and Professor Carol Much is going to give us the first presentation. Each presentation will be around 10 minutes, and all presenters have been warned very sternly that they're going to keep to 10 minutes, so we can keep to our kind of time process. So